Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. Today I am honored to have Kanchan Singh with me. She is the owner and founder of Crumbs Whiskers, and she has a neat phrase or something that I thought was pretty neat, and I'm going to read it to you so I don't mess it up, but that is, be humble in your aspirations, gracious in your success, and resilient in your failures. So Kanchan, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. I forgot I said that.
Well,
Like, I need to hear that right now.
I love it. Well, there is your reminder. That's a you quote. Put it on a board, whatever you need. Oh, that's good. So I want to highlight and start with your story. And once again, there could be things even prior to this, but you had elected to go to a university or a college on the East Coast of Maryland. And while you were there, your passion for animals came out. You started a club. So talk a little bit about forming that and where the passion for animals came from for you.
Yeah, well, where the passion for animals came for is like, I think it's built into me. It's who I am. Like, when I was a kid, I grew up in India and my first pet was a peacock. And I would like spend my time like saving, like, we didn't have like running water. We would have to get like buckets of water. And so like flies and things would like fall into those the
Yeah.
water buckets. And I would like spend my time like carefully fishing them out and like drying them, and then I'd be so happy when they could fly. In hindsight, I'm shocked I didn't like crush them, but anyway, like, I've just always loved animals, and I went vegetarian in kindergarten when I learned that. In my child mind, I thought, animals just died and then we ate them. That's cool. And then I was like, oh, the reality is very different. And I came home and declared I was going vegetarian. And my parents were like, okay, this is like a child, this is a phase. And I never, ever touched meat again. So, like, I was just
Wow.
very into animal welfare. And when I went to college, the first thing I wanted to do was join an animal welfare club on campus.
Yeah.
And so like when you start school, you have like that day where all the clubs are out and you like sign up, and like
Yeah.
the only animal welfare club was this like hardcore animal rights, like throw paint on people who wear fur. It was like just not my style, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that sucks. We're either going to be like intense about it or like just not do it. And then I was like, you know what? I'll just start my own animal welfare club. And they were like an animal right. And I believe in animal rights too, but they were like very intense about it. And so, yeah, so that was freshman year. I just started an animal welfare club mostly because I wanted to join one and there just wasn't one to join.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're Turfs for Animal Welfare. They still are around at UMD today, and they still do like what we used to do, which was like fundraise for local shelters, advocate for the school to go like organic or cruelty free and like the meat products and things like that, and just volunteer at local
Yeah.
shelters. Yeah.
That's so cool though. So
Thank you.
I want to ask about the transition from India to the United States. I'm sure it's exciting and I'm sure it's daunting all at the same time, but talk a little bit about that transition for you.
It's not exciting. As a
No.
13-year-old, like, think back to when you're 13, right? Like,
Yeah.
all you want is to fit in and to belong. And so,
Right.
like, if you were 13 and your parents said, like, we're moving to India or we're moving to China, like something that's so entirely different than like
Yeah.
no one looks like you, no one talks like you, no one dresses like you. It is honestly the worst thing one of the worst things you can do to a 13-year-old whose entire world depends on a feeling of belonging and a
Right.
feeling of like, I want to be just like everyone else. Like, I did not
Mm.
want to be different at all.
Yeah.
And so I actually ran away from home 3 times, and we missed our flight 3 times because I ran away from home. And finally, my dad was already in the US. We were in India, and he had to fly home and like literally he lied to me. He told me we were going on vacation, that he had changed his mind. We were going on vacation. No, we were not going on vacation. We were moving. That's the
Yeah.
only way they could get me to come to the US is by telling
Wow.
me we were on vacation. And when he told me we had moved, I like wept for like a week and I didn't talk to him for a very long time. And, you know, I remember like my first day in school, which he tricked me into, by the way. He was like, enroll me for school. I'm like, Dad, we're on vacation. Why am I going to school? And he's like, think about how cool you'll be when you go back to India and you can tell all your Indian friends you went to an American high school. And I'm like, that's cool. No, why? And so anyway, but I remember my first day in school. First of all, like, you guys just wear whatever, you don't have uniforms. And like,
Right.
you know, when you move from India to the US, rupees, a dollar is like 55 rupees, right? So like
Yeah.
your wealth gets decimated. And so we didn't really have money once we
Mm.
moved. And like all of our furniture came from like the dumpster and the trash. And like I had like two things to wear, both from like Walmart. And I just felt so embarrassed looking around at like everybody who like spoke in American accents. And I had this like fake Indian accent. Like I didn't want to speak at all. I would just
Yeah.
be silent. And like my clothes were obviously awful. And like, you know, they're like all these girls in like pretty makeup and pretty hair and pretty clothes. And I was like, and honestly, I was like terrified of white people. I'd never seen white people in my life. And I was just like, and everyone in my school pretty much was white. And I was like, it was really, really hard, honestly. And like,
Yeah.
um, I wasn't treated as like, kids in high school are mean.
Yeah.
And like, especially when you're different, you
Mhm.
know? And so like, I got made fun of a lot. And I like, yeah, I got told I smelled like curry, which was awful. I did smell like curry though, because my mom was constantly making curry in the house. I would like hide my clothes under my bed and be like, please don't touch the smell. But anyway, yeah, it was a really honestly humiliating. High school is like, I'm still processing high school in therapy. It was
Yeah.
one long public humiliation is what it felt like to me. Yeah.
So, wow. I mean, let's dive into that though, because I think to your point, those are such formidable years, right? You know, you're to a degree trying to figure out who you are and finding out where you are fitting in and where your differences are okay. And
Mhm.
so for you, one, just going through that as the certain age that we all are in that age, but also then transitioning to a new country and learning, you know, languages and new customs, if you will. You know, were you in school with other siblings, or how did that kind of work for you at that moment in time?
Yeah, no, my younger brother was in middle school, so I was just in high school by myself. And um I I have, you know, I'm like a decade behind, because I've only started like finding out who I am in the last like 4 years. So like I wouldn't say high school did not feel to me like self-discovery
Mm.
or, you know, any, or like I wasn't dating. Nobody wanted to date me. Like I wasn't dating, I didn't have friends. It was very much just survive. So like
Yeah.
I kept my head down. I just studied. I took like all the AP classes I could take, and like I would just be studying for the SATs all the time. And again, as always, I found comfort in animals. Like I had rescued this squirrel that was a baby, and like it had become my squirrel, and it would climb up me like a tree, and I would literally be studying for the SATs with like a squirrel in my hair, and people wouldn't be able to see it because my hair is so long. And then every now and then it would pop its head out, and people were like, what the fuck? So anyway, it's like I always like found comfort in like my relationship with animals. And so at the time I had a squirrel and I had a bunny, and they were like my only friends. It sounds really sad, but and it was very much, I was just focused on like studying, you
Yeah.
know, and like that's how I really got through it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
Wow.
that's kind of where like my drive comes from, because like I've had a very hard life.
Yeah.
And like what's gotten me through is like, okay, I'm going to focus on academics, or okay, I'm
Mm.
going to focus on this thing that I want to do. And I think that's why I can be so tunnel visioned on work in this
Yeah.
person. Yeah. Survival mechanism.
Well, we'll get to it, but it's working out well for you. So, so as you're in school, then once again, you've started that group at the University of Maryland, and then after that, you transition, you get a job at Accenture, and you're enjoying your work there. And once again, great company to be working for, very well, well known. But you decide, you know what, I want to take this trip. And so talk a little bit about kind of everything that then transpired for you.
Yeah. So I wasn't enjoying my work at Accenture. I was enjoying like what it gave me because I was
Yeah.
traveling to like New York, Toronto. I had like clients in those cities and I loved being in those cities and I loved kind of like working with a bunch of young people and that I enjoyed. But
Yeah.
honestly, it was just one of those things that was shiny on the outside. And when you
Mm.
do something like that, like the shine wears off very quickly.
Yeah.
And so like for me it wore off within a few months and I knew I wanted out, but I didn't know what I was going to do next, and
Yeah.
2 years in, like if you and I'm very sensitive and I'm very like it weighs on me very heavy when I'm not being true to myself. I think it weighs on different people in different ways and for me it's like heavy.
Yeah.
And so within a year and a half of really just forcing myself, I had like become a zombie. I'd lost, like there was no light in my eyes. It's really like, I like look back at photos of myself and I'm like, I don't know, it's vacant. Like I'm
Yeah.
vacant, I'm gone. And travel for me had been an escape in the same way that working was like, or studying at the time was like protective mechanism for myself
Yeah.
that could block out all the pain of like not fitting in and feeling like an alien and all those things. Like travel for me was always like an escape and
Mm.
everything would go away. And when I don't know what to do, it's just travel. And so because I didn't know what I wanted to do if I left Accenture,
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a 2-week vacation from my job, go to Thailand and volunteer with elephants because being with animals brings me back to myself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I just like woke up and I decided I booked my ticket for the next week. I told my manager I'm out, I'm
Yeah.
going the next week. And he was like, okay. And I went to this elephant sanctuary. And honestly, it was the first time I was happy, like truly happy in like a decade.
Wow.
Just like waking up in the mountains and like elephants are like roaming everywhere and the river and the sounds of like chickens and birds and water. And like, I was just like, oh my God, I feel alive again.
Yeah.
And it's been so long. And on that same trip, what I would do, Thailand has so many like stray dogs and cats.
Yeah.
I would like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I would be surrounded by these dogs and cats that I was also feeding. And so everyone picked up that I really, really loved not just elephants, but also like any kind of animal. And
Yes.
these two guys, this German guy and this British guy who I had met in a hostel when I was there, decided to take me to a cat cafe for my 24th birthday, which
Yes.
was like my 24th birthday was the day I was flying out. So it was like that afternoon and my flight was that evening. And they took me to a cat cafe and I'll remember there are moments in your life, like you said, right? You don't
Yeah.
realize necessarily how impactful they are in the moment. But
Yeah.
I'm very like intuitive. A part of me recognizes. Like a
Okay.
part
Yeah.
of me like feels like this is important, even if I don't know why yet. You
Mm.
know? And
Yeah.
I remember walking in and I felt it. I was like, this is significant. And
Yeah.
when we were there, I turned to my friends and I was like, I'm going home, I'm quitting my job, and I'm starting a cat cafe. And they both were like, yeah, Jacob and Nadim were their names. Jacob and Nadim both were like, yeah, we're doing it too. And then when I came home and actually quit my job and started a Kickstarter campaign, they were like, you're crazy. I was like, I meant it. I wasn't just joking. But literally
Yeah.
on that flight back from United, I remember I didn't even have a notebook because I had like a tiny backpack that I'd taken to Thailand. I
Yeah.
didn't even have a notebook. And I kept asking the air hostess to bring me all these like United napkins. And I basically had like this stack where the entire like 14-hour plane ride or whatever it was, I had mapped out like the entire business plan. And I was so excited. Of course, when I came to the US, everyone thought it was a crazy idea and I got poo-pooed real fast, real hard.
Yeah.
But like on that plane, I was like electric. I was just like buzzing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So let's talk about that. I think a lot of people have ideas, right? But then there's, to your point, like your two other friends, there's a barrier between having an idea and doing something about it, and just having an idea and going back to what's comfortable or what's normal. So talk a little bit about that for you, taking people's feedback and hearing it, and maybe there was some good feedback in there that you actually received as constructive, but there's probably a lot of it that's like you're just hating on it because it's not a normal idea, right? So talk a little bit about how you were able to kind of decipher between good information, not good information, and then actually taking the action steps to get there.
Honestly, I am somebody who listens to my heart above
Mm,
all else. And it's really hard because I'm also somebody who's highly insecure. And God, I'm like determined to change that in therapy. I'm working on it. But like, highly insecure. And when you put that combination together of somebody who stubbornly listens to their heart but is also highly insecure, you create the recipe for like high anxiety,
yeah.
especially when everyone else doesn't believe in it. Like
Mm.
I came home and I remember my parents thought it was stupid. My dad was like a cat restaurant. Like he kept calling it a cat restaurant. He still calls it a cat restaurant. Like that's not what that is. But it
Right.
and my boyfriend at the time, I could tell, like, when like someone's eyes, like when they think you've gone crazy but they won't speak it, but their eyes tell you everything that they're thinking. I
Yep.
remember the look in his eyes when I told him, and like nobody got it because none
Yeah.
of them had ever been to a cat cafe, and at the time none existed in the US.
Right.
And people were like, you're telling me people will pay money to play with cats? That's ridiculous. And I can see why they would think that. I truly can. And so, as a highly insecure person, I was absorbing that. I do absorb criticism like a sponge,
Yeah.
and like the nose like a sponge. But then, like, my heart, especially when my heart is like very adamant about something, it's almost like it's just like a percentage or two louder,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
it. And that's all I have to go on. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay. And I kind of had a safety net in the sense that I was like, I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna do a Kickstarter campaign. But if I'm not getting a good response and if the Kickstarter campaign doesn't get fulfilled, then I'm not gonna do it. So I did have a little bit of like a safety net,
Yeah.
that. But the Kickstarter campaign did really well, and we became like the number one trending thing in DC when we announced it. And so it was there that, like, yes, there were a lot of haters who didn't get it, but the niche, like the people who got it, loved
Yes. Yep.
it. And I just like held on to that. And honestly, that was the beginning of my insomnia, because like I was, like I said, I am very insecure, and so all the no's and all the criticism really got to me, and it like I wouldn't be able to sleep, and I had a lot of anxiety. So I think that a lot of people, when they don't pursue their dreams, like I say this all the time, like when you pursue your dreams, like be ready to be faced with all your fears and all your shit. It's going to be right in front of you, and like it's a lot sometimes, and I think
Yeah.
I get why we may not want to do that. I always think it's worth it to do that, and I always encourage people to do that, but I also understand why it's like, okay, I'm really not ready for that right now.
Yeah. I think that's a great point because, to your point, it's when I work for a corporation and maybe I'm doing a job, there's a lot less adversity that I'm going to face in the work realm than when I'm completely starting a brand new idea of something that doesn't even exist in the United States. So, it's one thing if it's a deviation of an existing idea, but when it's brand new and it's one of a kind, yes, you're going to get some of those eyes that say, "What are you thinking? What's going on here?"
Yeah. Yeah. And it's high risk,
Yeah.
and I was 24 years old and no landlord wanted me to wanted to rent their property to me.
Yeah.
Like they would like ask for my bank statements and ask for my business plan, and then I'd never hear from them again. And like no bank wanted to give me money. And like it is high risk. It's very,
Yeah.
very high risk, you know?
Yeah. So as you're going through that process, to your point, the Kickstarter campaign goes really well. What'd you raise? Like $15,000 in a day or something? I mean,
Yeah,
it was really
yeah.
a lot of traction gained there. So what ended up being kind of that breaking spot that allowed you to get into a location and to gain some traction and be able to open the business?
So the Kickstarter campaign did really well, and we just kind of became the talk of the town in
Yeah.
DC. And so suddenly, like landlords were like, maybe question mark, but not quite sure yet. And
Yeah.
luckily, the one person who ended up renting, believing in me and renting her property to me, she was a person who had like a lot of property in DC, but she wanted to start her own cat cafe in Florida where she lived. And
Got
so
it.
like because she wanted to start her own cat cafe, I feel like she got it. Whereas
Yeah.
everybody else kind of was like, okay, you have buzz today, but like in a week, this is gonna fizzle out. It's just a
Mhm.
trend. And
Yeah.
so like so I did get lucky in that like there was one person out of all the people I had reached out to that had her own dream of starting a cat cafe and
Yeah.
like understood it, and so
Yes.
that's when I got a property. And I mean, after that, it was nuts because I remember like our opening day, like 4 hours before, people started lining up. And like by the time we were open, it was like, and we were fully booked already for the whole day.
Yeah.
Because our first day that we opened our system for bookings, it crashed because of like the volume of people who were booking to go. And then we had done like $22,000 in bookings on our first day. And these are $8 tickets we were selling. That's not,
Yeah.
that's a lot of bookings. And there were like all these like lines and like people who wanted to get in. And it was me and a staff of two part-time people because I thought it was like a flop idea, but I had to listen to my heart. And I was like, I'm screwed. And like, I remember people were so upset they couldn't get in that like one lady like kicked the door, like broke the door. And then I was like with a hammer trying to figure out how to put this door back up. It was just like, yeah, totally kind of insane. And I feel like I totally just rambled down and totally lost track of what you even asked me. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. So that first day gives us a lot of traction then, right? I mean, if you're booked out the whole first day. And so once again, even giving a little premise to listeners. So at the Cat Cafe, so at Crumbs and Whiskers, you can book a spot, right? A time to come in, and then you get to have certain eateries have food or drink there, and then you get to hang out with cats.
Yeah, and they're all up for adoption and they're all rescued from risk of euthanasia and shelters. And it's very cuddly and very playful and very cute. It's fun. It's
Yeah.
healing. It's honestly like I believe in the human animal connection to like really heal. And I believe animals really heal. And it's like, it's healing, in my opinion.
Yeah. So for you to get the cats that come into your locations, is that something that you have a connection with certain shelters, or how do you kind of vet the ones that get to come in, and how does all that work?
Yeah, so we partner with a rescue, and what rescues do, shelters house cats. And rescues can go around pulling from multiple shelters. So there's not like one shelter that they pull from,
Yeah.
cats that are at risk of euthanasia, because the shelter has to take in more cats. And so if a cat hasn't gotten adopted in a few months, then they might need to put it down to create space for a new one.
Got
Um,
it.
and so we work with a rescue both in DC and LA that goes around and like rescues cats from risk of euthanasia.
Okay, got it. And so right away, how did those relationships kind of formulate? Was it once again, people were talking about this in DC so that you had people reaching out to you, or did you have to go around and connect with the?
Yeah, I reached out and I got really lucky because the Humane Society, the Washington DC Humane Society, wanted to partner with us because you know, they know the impact of cats like living in cages and the depression and the anxiety that it causes. And they were like, this is such a cool idea. And it's so
Yeah.
like it's a way of doing adoptions that's not stressful on the human, where the human can actually like get to know a cat and the personality of the cat rather than, oh, pretty cat, let me take it and then return it in a week because like you needed a cuddly cat when this is a really playful cat or whatever, you know. So
Right.
like they really thought that this was the future of adoptions, where and like a more humane way to house animals, and just like a way more innovative way for like adopters to adopt. So they got behind me, and like that was huge for me because they have a very large audience. So when they announced to their audience that they were partnering with the new cat cafe, we suddenly had so many eyeballs on us, and press, because they're
Yeah.
also connected to so many press outlets. So I got like insanely lucky with that.
Yeah. So how many cats at a time will be in one of the Crumbs and Whiskers locations?
Anywhere between 20 to 30.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a lot of cats.
Yeah.
But like that's the point. You get to come
Correct.
in and like we shower you in kittens. So like yeah, between 20 to 30, they are like usually between the ages of like 6 months to like 2 years. Like we like to focus on kittens and younger cats because a lot of them, if they are growing up in cages, will grow up to become very unsociable,
Mm,
unsocialized, like withdrawn animals.
yep.
Unlike a cat that may have gone into lived like up to 5 years and then gone into a shelter, but has already like developed a sociable personality. And like unsocialized cats and animals have a much harder time getting adopted, because if they want nothing to do with people and they're terrified of people, then of course like it's not a good fit. So we try to like focus on that age range so
Yeah.
that like they're getting socialized a lot through all the interactions with people.
That makes perfect sense. So you're having a ton of success in DC, and then you decide, well, I should open up a second location. Now, a lot of people might think, oh, second location, probably within an hour of her current location. And you decide all the way across the country. So talk a little bit about how the spot in Beverly Hills comes to be.
Yeah, it's in West Hollywood actually. And how, man, that's again, I follow my heart, right? And I was like, LA. I don't know. You should ask my heart should get its own interview. I wish I could like bypass my brain and just be like, "Hello, heart. Please explain yourself," because I don't understand it, you know. But
Yeah.
like my heart was like LA, and I remember I was like, I really want to create a cat cafe that's like an icon in pop culture. Like I
Yeah.
wanted to be, because I wanted cat cafes to gain traction, you know, and I want there to be lots of cat cafes owned by lots of people. I don't need it all to be like my cat cafe. I just wanted like that sounds kind of like, I don't know, pretentious to say like trendsetter, but like I just wanted it to like set that trend,
Yeah.
and I felt like the place to set trends is LA. And like if I wanted that kind of exposure, like if I wanted a clientele that was in Hollywood and for it to be a pop culture thing, well then they weren't going to come to DC. I had to go to LA. I'm Virgo, I'm very analytical. So like as loud as my heart is, my brain like keeps it in check. And
Yeah.
so I did like go on Google Trends, and where you can kind of like search the volume of search terms.
Yeah.
And I looked up the search volume of cat cafe, and I mapped it out by city. So the idea would be, let me look at which cities people are Googling cat cafe, but there are no cat cafes there, AKA the demand's there, there's just no supply, right? And
Yeah.
LA happened to top that list. So it kind of just like aligned, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so then I came out here and I opened the second location, and I had no plans of like moving to LA. I thought I was going to go back to DC, but then I fell in love with LA. But that's how that happened.
Absolutely. So as you're opening up a second location, and you still have the other location, talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think that's tough to run probably one location,
Yeah.
and you did it relatively quickly. I think within the first year and a half. So it's not as if, hey, after 10 years, I decided, now I can explore the second one. Pretty quickly thereafter, you decided, all right, location number two.
Yeah. I burned a lot of bridges, honestly. I burned
Yeah.
out a lot of people. I have a lot of employees who probably still hate me, ex-employees, but like because honestly I was 24, 25. I didn't really, sometimes I have kind of like a bold heart and I don't really like assess the reality, I'm kind of like, I'll just deal with it as it
Yeah.
shows up. And like the reality was the first location was not stable yet. My team members did not feel supported. They did not feel like we had it under control. And here I was opening a second location and people were pissed at me. And people did not think, they thought it was a little bit reckless, which, you know, in hindsight, I don't know. I still stand behind my decision, but I can
Yeah.
see how like you could see it that way because it wasn't stable yet. And it was almost like building on top of something that the stable foundation isn't there, you know? So like a lot of things were breaking, a lot of things were, it was like very chaotic. It was
Yeah.
very chaotic. We figured it out, of course, but like, you know, I don't know. It was just, I don't know that I recommend it unless you're like willing to like work 24/7 and like all you're doing is putting out fires, you know, because again, your location was not stable in the first place. But it was really cool because I think I wanted to open the second location. I wanted to be the first cat cafe in LA.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to open the second location quickly. I didn't want to lose my like timing. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we did because I thought like we opened at like perfect timing. It just came at a cost, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Well, and I think there's always the balancing act, right? Of how do we perfect something before we expand something? And sometimes you just have to expand and trust that the rest is just going to figure itself
Yeah.
out, right? Because there's a lot of people that start a business and they have one singular location for the entirety of their
Yeah.
careers because they just never took the risk of opening up number two because they never felt quite ready, right? It just wasn't the perfect timing yet. So I think there's value in that, yeah, sometimes you do just have to make the leap and see that it, figures itself out.
Yeah, and be okay with like the imperfections and the things
Yeah.
that fall through the cracks and just know that you can handle it, you
Mm,
know? Because I think that's what scares people is like, oh, I can't handle it, but you can.
absolutely. Now, something that I think super interesting for your business, which is not true for all businesses, is that you found something that you were super passionate about, that you had just a crazy why behind, and then pursued that. I think for a lot of people, oftentimes one of the barriers for their success is that they pick something that can make them money, but they just don't really have a passion behind that.
Right.
And so talk a little about that for you and how your passion for animals and the mission that your business is on, and why maybe in some of those days where you worked a 20-hour day or where you had to do that 5 days in a row, you were still resilient and able to fight through that.
You know, I feel being in the world, I feel a real responsibility to help others.
Mm,
Being in the world as somebody who has talents, as somebody who's, you know, is well educated, who has resources, who's in lucky enough to be in a part of the world where I have my freedom to do whatever I want to do and create whatever I want to create. It's not something a lot of people in a lot of the parts of the world have.
yeah.
I just feel a responsibility to use that for good because we are very privileged.
Mm,
And like that's kind of where my passion comes from is like wanting to do good. Like I couldn't work the hours I've worked or create what I've created if I wasn't driven by like reducing suffering and pain in the world. Like,
yeah.
you know, for animals with my business, for people with my book, like it's something that really truly drives me. And I know I have friends who just care about the money part and then do their hobbies and they're perfectly happy in life. And
Yeah.
like if that works for you, go for it. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work for me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, in LA, you've gotten some traction with different celebrities that has allowed it to once again have a potentially even bigger
Yeah.
impact. So, talk a little bit about maybe those first couple of times that either a celebrity came or tagged you in a post, whatever it was.
Yeah. You know, okay. So the interest, I, okay, I grew up being very traumatized. And one of my issues is that when good things happen, I either dissociate or it's called derealization, where like it's not real. So, like, I can tell you the first few times, like we got featured on BuzzFeed, which got like, I think like 14 million views or something ridiculous
Yeah.
like that, which by the way, I still kick myself for because our reservations were only open for 2 weeks at a time. So like we were fully booked and all these people came to our site and wanted to book and left and never booked. And I was like, such a horrible business move. Oh my God. I'm just like never gonna let myself off the hook on that one. But it didn't feel real,
Yeah.
honestly. Like I don't know what I thought. Like I was just so disconnected from it all. And then like Paris Jackson, Bella Thorne wanted to celebrate her birthday there, like before it even opened, like just when the news was out. And now it's been like Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner, Drew Barrymore, all these people, and I've met them. James Corden, he was there a couple weeks ago, and we were just talking. His kids like are obsessed with it, and I just did not. Again, I had a lot of insecurities and honestly a lot of really low self-esteem because of how I'd grown up.
Yeah.
So like it just felt like, and this is where my imposter syndrome and my depression was really hitting me hard, because I felt like I was a fraud and I felt like I
Mm.
was a fake, and I felt like all these people would realize that I was a fraud, you know? So
Wow.
like
Yeah.
I was numb through it, honestly. Like it didn't feel, I remember people would message me and be like, oh my God, I saw you on like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, or I like, you know, this like celebrity like posted about you on Instagram. Holy fuck. Like, and I like nothing. I felt nothing. I was numb. Like I was
Yeah.
completely like disconnected. Yeah.
Interesting. So I want to take that piece of the story and tie it into your book and then probably ask you questions about it. So you wrote a book, Dear Me, I Love You. Talk about what the premise was behind it. You've kind of hinted at it maybe a couple of times today, but talk a little bit about what the premise was behind it and what your goal or mission is with that.
Yeah. So I it's called Dear Me, I Love You because I've struggled with self-criticism and
Mm.
self-judgment and self-hatred my whole life.
Yeah.
And you know, we talked about kind of moving to the US and feeling beneath, like inferior to everybody else. And definitely part of it is just like my skin tone and being a woman and like those things that like kind of the messages are you're less than, right? Which
Mm.
I really like absorbed growing up
Yeah.
and absorbed again in the US. And part of it is like my parents were pretty neglectful and abusive. And so um I struggled with like self-destructiveness, and I always thought that if I had a career doing what I loved, if I had my own business, if I could help animals, I would be happy with myself and I would love myself. And you know, it's so cliche, but like the older you get, to realize all the cliches are the most important things in life. You know, it's so
Yeah.
like you can't be cynical about it anymore. But like we were saving cats, but it didn't feel enough. And what
Mm.
I found out in therapy was like nothing would ever feel enough for me because I didn't feel enough, you know? So like we
Yes.
were saving all these cats from euthanasia. And I used to think 17-year-old me, when I worked at a shelter, I was like, you know what? In my life, if I can even save one cat from dying, because I felt so powerless back then, I would be so proud of myself and I'd be so happy. And here I was saving thousands and it wasn't enough because
Wow.
all I could focus on was, well, every day these many 50,000 cats are euthanized, you know? So what's the point of saving these 1,000 cats? Like I was very like jaded and very hard on myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like the thing that I thought I would get from my business and from doing what I wanted, which was just like, I don't know, some level of self-satisfaction. It
Yeah.
was like I turned even harder on myself
Mm.
than I had in my whole life, which was like, you're not doing enough. You're so worthless. You're so like, and that's why the book is called Dear Me, I Love You, because it's the antithesis of how I treated myself, you know?
Yeah.
And I tell people this all the time, like, I wish all of our dreams came true because we would realize that's not where real happiness is in that external attainment of the thing. It's definitely satisfying. Don't get me
Yep.
wrong. I'm not discounting it.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna fill you up if you have a hole within you, you know? And for me, what I found was like suddenly the hole became bigger, because
Mm.
I think if you reach for something and you think if I just attain that, I'll heal, I'll like feel better, and then you attain it, but then you feel worse. There's nothing more like hopeless, like this feeling of like hopelessness
Yeah.
and like despair. And like that hit me, and it hit me hard. And like I just like started spiraling. Like I, you know, had that imposter fake syndrome. And again, I if I feel like I'm being inauthentic, like if I think people see me as amazing and successful, but I think that's a fraudulent view of me, I can't live with myself. Like
Mm.
I need to be authentic, and I need to feel like I'm being true, you know, like what other people are seeing in me is true, not false. And so
Yeah.
I started just like, yeah, like I remember like I stopped being able, I couldn't get out of bed. I would be in a dark room. There was like 2 weeks where I closed all my blinds and I just stared at the ceiling in emptiness. And every now and then it'd just be like cold tears. Like usually when I cry, they're like warm, like
Yeah.
cold tears, like going down my face. And I would only get out of bed like if I was so hungry that I felt like my stomach was like eating itself, and
Right.
I would like walk to my fridge and like eat a cold, hard piece of bread, like right out of the fridge, and go straight back to bed. Like it was really, really hard. And I started therapy because like also I was turning into an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like I tell like I think that I had a concept of what a CEO should look like.
Mm.
And that person is like competitive and like intense and like cutthroat, all the things that I'm not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I started playing that role because I was in those shoes. So I felt like I had to, otherwise I couldn't be successful in business.
Yeah.
And so, and really that was me being my dad, you know, and
Mm.
like everyone in my company were like, you're a jerk and we don't want to work for you. And so like everyone was quitting. It was just everything started like crumbling, you know, and I was crumbling. And so I started therapy and I started self-work and I started like facing my childhood, because I grew up in a house with domestic violence. Like I grew up being beaten. I grew up being sexually molested and assaulted from like 5 years old. And
Yeah.
that stuff is really, really like, those are in like your formative years, you know.
Right.
It really forms your opinions about yourself. And yeah, and so I started writing, and I wasn't going to publish Dear May I Love You. It was more so when I started therapy, I hadn't allowed myself to feel in so long,
Mm.
in like over a decade, that all of a sudden when I started feeling like anger and rage and guilt, shame and pain and all this stuff, like I felt like I was drowning, and I started writing. And that's when I started writing poetry. I haven't written poetry in my entire life. And it suddenly started like coming out of me. And I was like, what's going on? And, you know, I can discern, right? I can discern good art from bad art. And I'm like, this is actually good. I'm like, how am I writing good poetry? It's just like, what's going on? But like, I just started writing to process what I was going through. And I would share it with some people and they would cry and they would be like, that was cathartic for me. And I kind of realized like there's power in words, and there's power in poetry, and there's power in telling stories that are
Yeah.
true, you know. And maybe I could help people going through depression and anxiety. And like, again, my thing is healing. And whether it's through animals or whether through cats or whether it's through poetry, like it's
Yeah.
all in the name of healing. And so yeah, so I put the book together of like my own journey from the last 4 years, from like self-hatred and self-loathing to like learning to see the beauty in myself and the strength in myself and the love in myself, and to start to fall in love with myself and what that process looks like.
Yeah. Whoa. So, I mean, there's so much to that, right? I think what you said at the beginning and how you ended that is about as perfect as it can be, that you can accomplish as many different things as you want. But if the person that you're with every single day, every minute of that day, you can't enjoy or be happy with, it really doesn't matter, right? All those things, they can be great for, society. They can be great for cats, but it's still not going to be good enough for your life.
Yeah. And you can keep doing the more thing, because I was doing the more thing for a while,
Yep.
and it only makes the hole within you bigger. It only gives the contrast of like, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of people as well, though, a person might be listening to this right now and they might say, I can put myself in your shoes, but I don't know that I'm ready to do the work, right? Because becoming a better version of you and working through past things is not a fun task always, right? There's a lot of
It's brutal.
introspection that has to yeah, that has to happen. So what would be your statement or encouragement to somebody who's maybe at that point and now is saying, all right, I should probably start doing this work, but I need that little extra nudge?
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to start a company when I started a company. I wasn't ready to do self work when I started self work. Like, you're never ready. I think the idea of being ready is a myth.
Yep.
And so, I would just say, just start. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean like, now I do everything from therapy to hypnotherapy to subconscious reprogramming to like spiritual work. Like, you don't have to like go off the deep end. Like, it took me a while to like pick all this up, but
Yeah.
like, you can just start,
Yes.
and like that's that. And once you start it, and as long as you keep the momentum going, it builds on itself. And it's kind of like making like a snowball. Like, you just start like rolling the snow down the hill, and eventually it's like a ball and it just rolls on its own, and it's not as hard. And
Yeah.
it's just hard in the beginning, and it's just how it is for everyone. I think that like, we can get discouraged when it's hard in the beginning, but like, that's just how all beginnings are, I think, you know
Yes.
yeah.
Well, Kanchan, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story and the who knew moments. I mean, I sit there, I think about how you said, you had the little squirrel snuggling up on you as you studied, traveling to Thailand, celebrating your 24th, coming home, burning the boats and just saying, I'm starting this business. And then additionally, the personal development you're doing. I am super stoked to continue to follow your journey, all the things you're doing for animals, but then also all the lives you're going to touch on the personal development side as well.
Thank you.
You betcha. Well, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.